The drama surrounding modern professional basketball has never really been about what happens on the court. It has always been about power, leverage, and the invisible forces that determine who truly matters when the lights get brightest. For decades, the balance inside women's basketball felt stable, almost predictable, built on a quiet ecosystem where veterans controlled the narrative, ownership controlled the money, and the league itself moved forward without ever truly breaking into the global spotlight. But then everything changed, and it changed faster than anyone inside that system was prepared for. When Caitlin Clark stepped into the picture, she didn't just arrive as another talented rookie. She arrived as a disruption. Not loud, not confrontational, but undeniable. Her presence alone began to shift attention, draw new audiences, and create a level of visibility the sport had been chasing for years. And while that kind of momentum should have unified everyone involved, it instead exposed fractures that had been quietly building beneath the surface by the time Team USA gathered for training camp. The tension surrounding the league had already reached a boiling point. Conversations about contracts, revenue splits, and player leverage dominated headlines, creating an atmosphere that felt heavy, almost suffocating. But the moment cameras turned toward the practice floor, something entirely different emerged. There was no visible stress, no sign of internal conflict spilling into the game itself. Instead, there was energy, movement, and something even more telling. Joy. Clark moved through drills with a calm confidence that didn't need validation. The ball seemed to follow her rhythm, passes arriving exactly where they needed to be, shots falling with a quiet inevitability. Around her were elite players, stars in their own right, yet the dynamic felt subtly different. It wasn't about hierarchy or status. It was about flow. And within that flow, something unexpected began to happen. Veteran players, the same figures often associated with control and authority within the league, found themselves reacting. Not resisting, not dismissing, but reacting. The pace of practice changed when Clark touched the ball. Decisions had to be made faster. Movements had to be sharper. The margin for hesitation disappeared. It wasn't forced. It wasn't announced. It simply happened. That's what made it so powerful. There was a moment during a scrimmage sequence, almost casual on the surface, where everything seemed to crystallize. The ball rotated through multiple hands, defenders shifted, spacing opened for a split second, and Clark delivered a pass that cut through the entire structure of the defense. It wasn't flashy for the sake of attention. It was precise, calculated, and devastatingly effective. The kind of play that doesn't just create a basket, but forces everyone watching to recalibrate what they thought was possible in that moment. And then came the shot, late in a drill designed to simulate pressure. With bodies moving, voices echoing, and the tempo pushing higher, Clark pulled up and delivered a game-winning shot as if it were routine. The reaction wasn't explosive. It wasn't theatrical. It was something quieter, almost stunned. A pause, a recognition. Because what had just happened wasn't about a single play. It was about what that play represented. In that instant, the conversation shifted from potential to reality. For years, the structure of the league had been built on collective identity, on the idea that no single player defined the product. But moments like that challenged the entire foundation of that belief. Because what Clark was demonstrating wasn't just skill. It was gravity, the ability to pull attention, reshape space, and elevate the environment around her without saying a word. And perhaps the most striking part of it all was her demeanor. While debates raged off the court, while narratives were constructed and arguments escalated, Clark remained steady. Her approach never changed. She spoke about opportunity, about gratitude, about the simple act of playing the game at the highest level. There was no visible frustration, no engagement with the noise surrounding her. Instead, she positioned herself in a way that made everything else feel smaller. That contrast became impossible to ignore. On one side, a league wrestling with its identity, navigating complex negotiations and internal disagreements. On the other, a player operating with clarity, focus, and an almost effortless understanding of her role within the bigger picture. It wasn't a direct confrontation, but it didn't need to be. The difference spoke for itself. Inside that Team USA environment, something else began to take shape as well: chemistry. Not the forced kind that comes from obligation, but the natural kind that develops when players trust what they're seeing. Clark's connection with teammates grew stronger with every possession. Movements became more synchronized. Reads became quicker. The game itself started to look easier, even at its highest level. And that's where the real shift happened, because what was unfolding wasn't just about one player standing out. It was about a system beginning to adapt around her presence. A realization that when the ball moved through her hands, everything else opened up. Defenses stretched. Opportunities multiplied. The entire structure of the offense evolved in real time for those watching closely, especially those responsible for shaping the future of the sport. The implications were massive. This wasn't just a glimpse of talent. It was a blueprint, a demonstration of how the game could look when built around pace, vision, and decision-making at an elite level. And more importantly, it was happening in an environment free from the external pressures that had been dominating headlines. No distractions, no politics, just basketball in its purest form. That purity made everything else feel distant. It highlighted the gap between what the sport could be and what it sometimes allowed itself to become. And in doing so, it quietly redefined the conversation, not through statements or declarations, but through performance, through consistency, through moments that didn't ask for attention but commanded it anyway. By the end of camp, the takeaway wasn't just that Clark had impressed her teammates or delivered highlight plays. It was that she had shifted perception of the game, of the system, of where the real value truly lies when everything is stripped down to its core. Because in professional sports, for all the complexity, all the business, all the negotiation, there is still one undeniable truth. The game itself decides. The moments decide. The players who can rise within those moments, who can shape them, who can redefine them, are the ones who ultimately change everything. And in that practice gym, far from the noise, far from the headlines, Caitlin Clark did exactly that. If you've been watching this unfold, I want to hear your perspective. Did this moment feel like a turning point for Team USA and the future of the game, or just another glimpse of what Clark has been building all along? Do you think performances like this will shift the balance of power in women's basketball moving forward? Drop your thoughts below. And if you want more deep, story-driven breakdowns like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter.